Hey guys and girls, welcome to Forgetting Walls, the podcast. This is episode 48, and this week we start a short series. We're going to be talking about depression, suicide, mental illnesses, self-harms, and other things of that nature. But this week, we just sit around and conversate about our experiences. David, Justin, Chris, Graham, Keith, and myself sit down and just kind of share back and forth, just conversate a little bit about something that's very serious and something we need to pay attention to, especially this time of year around the holidays. You know, sometimes people are alone and we need to recognize that. And depression is a real thing. You just can't get over it. We also want to say thank you for listening, joining us and giving us feedback. This week, Keith brings a story that we should get some feedback off of. Lord have mercy. How can we let him loose with these stories? Well, we just want to thank you. We're almost there at a year, 48 episodes in, and about 3 more episodes, and then we'll have a year on it. But throughout the whole time, there's always been one constant, and that's the dubstep from Ben Sound over at bensound.com. And welcome to Forgetting Walls.
You are very welcome.
Yeah. I don't know why I had to do that, but it had to be done.
It gets stuck in your head.
It kind of does. That was if you want to know what that was Drop Kick Me Jesus by Bobby Bare.
From his album Super Hits.
The Super Hits of Bobby Bare. Thank you, Justin, for putting that in my head.
You're welcome. Anything I can do.
So how are the boonies doing?
Doing well.
Can't complain.
Yeah.
Is it cold?
It's not as cold as it was probably last time that we talked. It's going to get cold this week. I saw the forecast. It's going to drop drastically. But other than that, it's been good. I took the GRE last week.
Oh, very good. Very good.
What's the
GRE? So got through that. Did pretty decently. Still waiting back for my essay scores, but we'll see.
For the layman, GRE is the graduate requisite exam. Is that right?
I don't think it's requisite, but it's something like that. It's basically the college equivalent of the SAT.
Yeah. So he can go to graduate school.
Whether or not college did anything and you're smart or not.
David, you look so thrilled that the temperatures are going to be falling. Every time he talked about the temperatures drastically falling, your face just got a little more tense.
It's the same thing your face would do.
I thought I was building up a tolerance, but I probably haven't experienced anything yet.
So the other day, the high was like 40-something, 3 degrees, but we had wind gusts of 40 miles an hour.
Wow, that's a bummer.
And so with that, it felt like 27. And all the people who just transferred or freshmen and everything were like, "It's so cold here. I can't feel my face. I can't breathe." And I'm like, "You have no idea."
It's going to be.
You're in for a treat.
Let's see. It's going to be 75 Wednesday. Man. Tomorrow's going to be 72.
It's going to be in the 40s here.
It's going to be 73 on Thursday. Nice, but it's going to be raining on Thursday. But
resentment is building up on this side from David.
But Saturday it will be cold here. It'll be 63. And hold on, the low will be 39. If everybody could just see David's face right now, that'd be great.
Oh, I love it.
I love it too.
Well, we've done our talk about the weather. Let's maybe shift a little bit to some things that has happened this week that are a little bit more serious than the weather. Even though I would attain that the weather is always serious.
True.
Yes, especially for David. David, we are praying for you.
Please keep me in your prayers. Pray without ceasing.
May the Holy Spirit warm your soul to warm your body. But seriously, there was some things that happened this week. Justin, you're a little bit more on top of the current affairs. So
Right.
you want to kind of...
Well, right. Well, this week, I mean, for those listening, it's usually like a few days or behind, but it'll still be talked about, no doubt. This past week on November 13th, which happened to be my birthday, which really sucked, but a lot of really terrible things happened around the world. One of most notably is in Paris. There were terror attacks, and over 100 people were killed, and I think it was over 300 wounded. And then also terrorist attacks also happened in Beirut, and funerals bombed in Baghdad. There was earthquakes in Japan and also in Mexico, and everything just sort of turned out to happen that day. And yeah, it was a really, really tough day for everyone. And so a lot of us are still feeling the aftermath of that and really thinking through it. And it's not like these things don't happen almost every day far away from us, but it just seems so much more real and so much closer to home when it happens to, Paris, like a major Western city, So a lot of people are still reeling from it and seeing what the implications are going to be with this, especially how it's going to deal with the refugee crisis and how different countries are going to respond to that. I know in America already there's a lot of contention that I've seen so far with that, but it's a very tragic event that happened, and so I don't know how much I want to talk about it, but
well, outside I know it's a terrorist attack. I don't know if they've labeled it to one group or another. Whether I don't think that really matters.
It was ISIS.
They did label it to them. And
yeah, they claimed it like right after it happened.
Yeah, and a few of the actual assailants were Parisians or Frenchmen that joined ISIS.
Okay. I don't know. For me, the whole refugee thing is that, you can look at it a couple ways. You can look at helping people, and, when you help people, there's going to be bad things that happen. You can't control those things, or you can say, well, we're just going to shut down our borders and, no one can come in.
Right.
I don't know how you feel about that. You can protect yourself, but, even to a sense of protecting yourself, you still can be attacked.
Right.
I guess, prepare for the worst and hope for the best. Sometimes is a thing I've seen go around. I don't know how I guess I feel about that, but I guess that's a mentality that some people have.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about this. I don't know. Do you think it's directly related just to the refugee, the Syrians flooding in?
Well, yes and no. It wasn't necessarily caused by the Syrian refugees, but I know at least one of the attackers actually got into France using a stolen passport from Syria.
Okay.
So they were posing as a refugee. So there's some correlations, but it's
okay.
tough to say that it was because of this refugee crisis. I don't think you can say that.
Yeah. Well, and I because how people tend to react, and we've seen it. And of course, you've seen it on Facebook. Everybody's posting their stuff about letting refugees in or not letting refugees in, and
right.
Just because all these people were let in is not necessarily attained to the refugees coming in for the attack. I don't think if somebody wants to do something, they'll use whatever they can to do it. That's how I feel, no matter what it is. If they got their mind made up, I think they're going to find a way to do it. And
right.
Terrorist attacks are, one thing. They're going to find a way to do what they want. They have a mission. Then I think they believe so faithfully in what they're doing that it's the right thing. They will give their lives in the process of doing that.
Right.
So,
and I totally agree. And also another issue has come up with this about, right after it happened, because I was following it along, because breaking news, and I was following along as it was happening. And even as it was happening, there were people posting things like anti-Muslim kind of rants and memes and stuff like that around. And I mean, I'm not Muslim, so I don't know if I can speak for the Muslim population, but as someone who studies a religion for a living, this attack is not representative of all of the Muslim population. It's a group of extremists. It's very political, it does have religious roots, but it is very, very political at its base. And we can't automatically, because of this attack, then label all Muslims. We can't start treating Muslims like subhumans because of this thing. We can't
I agree.
do like what happened after 9/11.
Yeah, well, it's the mentality of human beings. I mean,
right.
It's they get scared and they go after. I mean, that's what we did to the Japanese during World War One. World War Two. Sorry, not World War One. World War Two. We did that there. I mean, you can go throughout history, and whenever something happens, we target the whole group of people, and we lay blame to the whole group. I mean, you can talk about Christians the same way. Westboro Baptist does something claiming Christianity, and all Christians are labeled under this Westboro Baptist mentality. You're hateful, bigotry, all that. It's just how people are. It's easier to assume a mantle for everybody under one banner than actually trying to look at each individual human being for who they are.
Right, exactly.
And it's the suckiest thing you can do. I hate being grouped in with somebody else, especially when that somebody else doesn't represent who I am as an individual.
Right.
It sucks. I don't get all over Keith because he's a Tar Heel fan. I mean, he's a little bit different. He's actually,
baby.
Pleasant to be around at times.
Oh, thank you.
But I mean, for us though, in the light of what happened at Paris and Lebanon and other places around the world, Paris wasn't the only place, and that's my other thing. Because Paris is such a notable city, it has that Western culture to it. It gets all the notoriety, but we can't forget about everybody else who, there were this multiple things that happened on the 13th,
right?
And it's a shame that for the people who lost their lives, it's hard to think about, losing loved ones and losing them in that sense, unjustifiable, no reason for it, just to, fulfill your own purpose and your own agenda and to make yourself feel good about what you think is right. If this is going to be, the idea of the God that you serve, then, maybe it's time to start rethinking about that. If Christians, if somebody come and told me that, to be a Christian, we had to go out and, maim and murder people who had no business with us or didn't believe the way we did, then I may have to sit back and think, well, why am I having to do something for this God who's all powerful and take out these people? He can't handle this himself. So I don't know. That's just my mentality.
Right. And I think, I guess on a kind of final note, I don't know how much longer I want to talk about this, but on a sort of final note, I think that as a Christian community, we need to gather together and to be able to invite us, give invitations of mourning and compassion and reflection, and then go out and do something about it. Pray if you want to pray, if you believe that helps. That's great. Do that. If you want to go and give to an organization that goes to helping families or helping during this tragedy, then do that. We need to be a people who show compassion and love and mercy in these times, and not always try to defend almost, because a thing that tends to happen after tragedies like this, especially on Sunday mornings, I believe, is immediately people go, okay, well, they immediately go to theodicy, which is how can all loving God permit tragedy and evil to happen in the world?
Exactly.
And I know way too many churches that immediately after any tragedy like this go to try to defend their doctrine of theodicy, which I'm not saying is necessarily a bad thing. I think having doctrine is great and all that, but in this time, I think it sometimes can be very almost inappropriate in a way to try to just simply defend doctrine and not give people space to mourn or to reflect or to give compassion.
No, I agree.
To others. So
I agree.
That's sort of a final point I want to make.
No, I agree. I think with any tragedy, we have the same thing happens. There's not enough time for us to reflect on the people that lost their lives, the families that are going through this problem, the city that, just like when Charleston happened, we had that whole same spiel about, okay, now everybody's jumping on their racist agenda, their Christian agendas, all these different agendas, but we never thought about the people who actually lost their lives in that shooting and think deeply about really what's going on in our current society, instead of trying to say, well, if you were like this, or if you were like this, if you weren't like that, then all this wouldn't happen. But the reality is there's always going to, because we are humans, this is what happens.
Exactly.
It's unavoidable. Mm-hmm. So welcome to the human race, people. Sorry. But, my condolences and my thoughts and my prayers for sure go out to all those. Well, I'm not sure that if anybody affected by this actually will be listening to our podcast, but
you never know.
You never know. Somebody may pick it up. But if somehow you are affected by this tragedy, we are, maybe as a group, we are very sorry. And if there was anything we could do, I would love to be able to help some way, somehow. Mm-hmm. But right now, all we're going to do is just say, hey, stop being a butthole and, love people, because this is the issue. Mm-hmm. But speaking about good things, though.
Yes.
In a mere 3.5 hours.
Oh, jeez.
We will be 1 month out from continuing the greatest sagas that have ever been created. Yes, I am talking about Star Wars.
Maybe of course you are.
Maybe not your smoothest segue ever.
There needs no smooth segue for Star Wars.
You should be able to roll into a segue for Star Wars as smooth as BB-8 rolls across the ground.
BB-8 may get punted. How dare
Have you seen those little remote control ones?
The ones that are Bluetooth to your iPhone?
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
my gosh, yes, I played with one. So much
fun. Oh, really?
Fun. Yeah, so much fun. But it's still not R2-D2, and so. But I'm good with it. He looks cool. It may be fun. I'm just kind of cool. It's just kind of cool that he's not CG'd. It's like, it's just so amazing.
Yeah.
Which brings me to a point that, we're talking about this transition of Star Wars, and I've because of what's getting ready to happen, and me trying not to get into the spoilers of the plot.
Okay. We appreciate it.
I'm not trying to read them. I'm trying to stay away from all of it.
Right.
But looking at what I've seen in the trailers so far, in the TV spots, and because I know this is not like technically canon to the actual trilogies, but there are a few things, and I'm such a lover of the Sith lore and the politics and everything about the Sith. I feel that the Sith will technically no longer be in this upcoming films, even though Kylo Ren is supporting a red lightsaber, and he is in the trailers. You can see him addressing, I guess, Darth Vader, the burnt mask of Vader. Right. I don't think that they're going to carry the Sith legend out with this. I just kind of feel they're going to go in a different route to get away from maybe the expanded universe mentality of the Sith.
Oh, they definitely are. I mean, getting away from the expanded universe. I mean, that was one of the first things Abrams said, is kind of throwing out the expanded universe.
Yeah, that's
and everybody
crazy.
was like, what?
Yeah, that's crazy to think about. But anyways, I am thoroughly stoked that it's going to happen. We are a month out, and I can't wait.
I'm really impressed so far from what I've seen about how there seems to be a really good mix of CGI and practical effects.
I agree.
Whereas, so I've been going through and watching all of the Star Wars movies.
Same.
And I started with episode 1, went chronologically that way because I wanted to get the worst ones over with.
Yep.
And I finished episode 4 a few days ago, and which I went back and I haven't watched that movie in probably in years. I watched it all the time when I was a kid, and I forgot how great of a movie Episode 4 is.
You're absolutely right.
And I really enjoyed it, and I caught a lot more things than I did last time I saw it. The only thing I didn't like is in the DVD release that has, it's like restored and they added a lot more like CGI stuff to it, and it looks so out of place.
Looks so bad.
That was my only complaint about that edition. That
if you want to see the original, I have the original VHS.
Oh, I do too.
Here at the house.
I don't have it here with me in Boone,
from
but I do have it.
I don't know what it was, 70, when they released that VHS.
Wasn't it 78 or 77?
It was 76.
77 was when...
77 is when the actual movie came out.
Yeah, but they wouldn't have released the VHS for that until the 80s.
Yeah, it was in the 80s when they actually released the VHS. It's because...
Right.
Man, come on, VHS in the 70s? Oh, who could afford that? That's crazy.
It was super expensive. That show, it was late 70s when they came out to VCR.
That was the Blu-ray of the 70s.
Really? Wow. I can remember how much they cost. I remember getting our first VHS player. We had Betamax first because they were cheap.
Wow.
Yeah, word. But, dude, I'm going to tell you what. You got that first VHS and you're paying like $550 for a VHS player.
Jeez.
Word. Nah, I don't remember how much they cost, but they were expensive. I know my old man's like, we're not getting one until you get a job, boy. And I'm like, wow. And then when I got a job, we still had VHSs. Anyway, Star Wars in a month, people. Love it. We're going to be talking a lot more about it as we get closer to that day. But stick around with us. We're going to be back in a minute, starting a short new series.
And I watch them covet our style, our confidence, natural rhythm, our terms of endearment, but not our struggle. And the products of the ghetto, what poverty can produce. And oddly enough, we giggled when you mimic the sweet revenge. Homies not stupid can tell the difference between admiration and mockery, please. So we protected our music, cause truthfully we thought it was all we had. And watch, I'll make a killing off it, hip-hop to jazz. Elvis the Fats Domino, Patra to Gwen Stefani. And the fact them names are foreign, that's just what I'm pointing to. Y'all imitated Jamaicans, attempted to grow dreads and commodified reggae. That's Marley's face, so everything your children use as faith as an excuse to smoke weed. So we grew angry, unaware of God's plan for rescue. But we ain't no better, got a flawed version of personhood, identifying only by being victims of oppression. A true story.
And welcome back. That was Propaganda with 3-Chord Bond off of the Crimson Chord CD. That was I don't know if it was my favorite yet, but from Humble Beast Records over at humblebeast.com, that was a awesome. I mean, just to kind of reflect and just some good poetry. Check it out. Propaganda, Crimson Chord, 3-Chord Bond. And,
that was solid.
Yeah, it was good.
Very, very political. I liked it.
So tonight, in the meat and potatoes, we're going to take a swing. We just come out of our last series talking about heaven and hell. We're going to go into a small, probably about a 3-week series starting this week, dealing with. I don't want to call it just depression, but maybe it's a depressing series we're getting ready to get into.
You could call it sad, like the seasonal depression, the syndrome.
Yeah. But we're going to kind of deal with depression, maybe a little bit about mental illnesses that deals with depression. We'll probably want to talk about suicide and self-harm And tonight we're just going to kind of keep it open. We're going to talk personal experience.
Right.
For me, it's because of this time of the year. Holiday seasons are coming up, and people, who have lost loved ones, who may be alone, who don't have anything, who are financially strapped, who have children, who can't provide for them. And there's all these things go into it, and there's so much pressure being put on from the outside, especially the commercialization of Christmas and Thanksgiving and all that goes on. There's so much pressure to provide these things that sometimes are very much out of our reach. Just brings really bad feelings, sadness, heartache, of all these things that are going on. And, I think it's a good chance to maybe sit back and talk about it and say, if you're out there listening, you're not alone.
Exactly. And I think even from a student perspective, a lot of us, at least here in college, a lot of people get really, really stressed towards the end of the semester. Not only does the weather change and that affects mood, but also, exams and final things going on, and, whether or not worried about passing or failing, or so much, you feel like you have so much, like a workload on you and everything. And,
right.
And also there may be issues with family and stuff over, holidays, and whether or not you can go back and visit them during the holidays and stuff like that. And, one of the highest rates of suicide, at least in college, I know, like nationally, is also around Christmas time, but it's also for the college student that's around the same time as well. It's the highest rate, so it's applicable to now. I feel a little bit, if I'm honest. It's a lot of pressure and a lot of stress that honestly I put on myself, but it seems like coming from the outside.
Right.
But as we'll probably get into, I have a history of dealing with that. So,
yeah, I think there's a level to where depression is like born from you can never say mental illness without it sounding so, like bad, like something's wrong with you because you have a mental illness. But
right. Exactly. And there's sort of the stigma around, even when you're like, I'm going to counseling, or I'm thinking about going to counseling. People are like, oh, what's wrong with you?
Yeah. And it, typically we're just trying to find help and deal with what's going on in our head. It's not like we're deranged lunatics. And
exactly.
But I think everybody, deals with a touch of depression at some point in their life, but there's others who are like mentally, they have a mental illness of depression that consumes them.
Right.
And just kind of lead into it, as this podcast is coming out this week and you're listening to this, there should be a blog being released too on our site by a new author, David, who's on the show with us now, who speaks personally to these issues. And I hope you check it out. And I'm pretty sure if you're listening to this podcast, you've already read it. So thank you. But I think tonight for us is, I just want to kind of let us get it out there personally, and maybe, like I was talking about earlier, from the first person or the third person point of view of how depression affects us, and whether it's suicide to the extreme of suicide, or to the extreme of self-harm, or just, I guess, kind of in the middle of where it's just how do we deal with depression in of itself.
Right. And I think, like you said, this week is going to be a more general overview, us talking about our experiences, or maybe not all of our experiences, but being as open or closed as each of us want to be, and then diving more head first into some of the other topics more specifically. So,
you were talking about college students, and something that just kind of came up. I was looking at some statistics of depression in college students,
right?
And the things that kind of stick out to me is that suicide is the third leading cause of death amongst college students. I mean, that's pretty high. 1 out of 4 college students suffers from some form of mental illness, including depression.
Right.
Those are pretty big numbers. 4 out of every 5 college students who either contemplate or attempt suicide show clear warning signs. I don't know if I really I have a hard time agreeing with that stat.
Really?
Yeah, because what do they mean by clear warning signs? And we'll probably get into that a lot more when it comes to the suicide, when we talk about suicide particularly. Right. But just keep that in the back of your mind, because I don't know. There's, I guess, unless you're a trained professional, they're not clear. That's how I kind of feel.
Not
about
always,
it. Yeah. But I mean, for me, I know you hear me talk a lot on the show, and I'm not really a depressed person. I've dealt with like little bouts of depression. I mean, of course I did when I was a student in high school. We were very poor at times. I know my parents tried, and when they split, my mom tried, my dad tried. That's fine. But you deal with people picking on you because you don't have a certain amount of money, and your friends have a certain amount of money, and you're trying to live up to their standards because you're trying to be their friends, and that kind of weighs in on you. And then, the pressure of everything going on. So, I mean, I dealt with it. I didn't deal very well with it. I ran away from home, one time because I thought, and I don't want to call it silly because I don't want anybody else to think what they're dealing with is silly, but I kind of look back and go, maybe I could have dealt with it in a different way at that time, but I didn't know how. I'm running away from home because I feel like my parents are mad at me and I'm not doing anything right, and and nobody loves me. But I knew everybody, I knew people loved me. My parents really weren't coming down because I wasn't doing things right. I was just making bad decisions, and and I didn't know what to do with that. But everything just kind of compounded, and I'm like, well, you know what? I mean, if this is how it is, why don't I just run away? And then when I'm running away, I'm like, well, nobody's coming after me, so nobody really loves me, right? Because I didn't feel that, and I'm like, well, why don't I just go like kill myself? I can do that. I mean, nobody who will care? Nobody will care. I mean, that's all those things that's going through my head at that time in my life, and they seem very logical, and I didn't understand at that time. I mean, you think, man, that was almost 30 years ago, and there wasn't anybody out there talking about depression and talking about suicide like we talk about today. Nobody helping you go through. It's like, there are these things that can help you out of this. So my experience is going to be totally different from everybody else's.
Right.
When I came through as a high school student, and going into the Army, those things that I dealt with, it was just looked on like a weakness. Like, how dare you? That's stupid. You're selfish. Which I guess really doesn't...
Just get over it.
Yeah, it doesn't make it any better. Good job.
Nice segue right
there. Yeah, into that blog post. But, so for me, growing up, depression was more of something that was wrong with you or weakness or anything like that,
Right.
But today is a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's hotlines. There's counselors. There's people out there that are looking to help. But then again, like I said, I mean, I've dealt with more people. I think I have more experience with depression and things like that from a third person experience.
Gotcha.
I'll just say this: in, let's say, maybe the last, 2008 is when I first started over there at that youth pastor position, and since 2008. I have personally been the officiate of 7 teenage suicides, 7 or 8, I think, and that's actual suicides, not kids who just died in car wrecks and things of that nature. But I meant these kids took their own lives, and for me, that's 7 too many.
Right.
Yeah.
And that I have this experience, and it's just that makes you almost want to be depressed from seeing that and being a part of that.
Yeah, definitely.
And we'll get more into that later. But
I mean, for me, I definitely have a lot more first person experience with depression. So if you've read my blog post that I had posted probably about a month ago or so, I was bullied all throughout school, all throughout elementary school, middle school, first year of high school, and even when I moved. I was still bullied, but definitely not nearly as much. And they were for a lot of reasons. And like I said, when everyone's telling you the same thing, you start to believe it yourself. When people tell you that, you're a freak, you think that you're drastically different than everyone else. When people tell you that, you're worthless, then you start to believe that your life has no inherent value. And to me, and at this time, I was 13. And there was a lot of different factors that went on. I left Christianity, the church I was a part of, and all that. And it was a really rough time in my life. And so I was always the kid who always did the right things. I was, morally good from the outside. I was nice, I was kind, I was really quiet. But inside was just freaking turmoil. And, when I was 13 and 14, there were like several suicide attempts, that I tried and failed, because I couldn't even do that right. That was my mentality at the time.
I'm glad you were a failure at that.
Exactly. And I think, I'll share one short story of kind of like what snapped me out of it. And I know David can relate to this very well, but I had a friend who attempted to commit suicide, and I basically was on the phone with him all night, talking him down, and that really changed my perspective about how maybe other people would see me if I did do that, or how it would affect others around me, that it didn't just affect me. Because I saw it as a way to escape everything. But I still, even after I moved away and, I became a Christian at 16, I still battled with depression. I still do today. I think all too often we have this tendency to sort of, when we tell stories like this, which, redemption stories or whatever, testimonies, it's so tempting to, take the model that we've all heard, that I went through this rough time and then I met Jesus and now everything's better. That's not the case.
No, it's not.
I have hope. But I still struggle with depression. And even this past week I've had bouts with depression. And it's just whether or not I choose to let that consume me or not. And let myself get lost in that. And I personally have been to counseling for depression and for other things as well. And I would definitely, anyone who is going through depression or has any sort of suicidal thoughts or anything like that, counseling is one of the best things that's happened for my mental health. I've been going for the past few months, and it's been really great. So I would highly recommend that. But definitely reach out to someone and tell someone, talk with someone about it. But yeah, over the next few weeks, you'll hear a lot more about my stories and stuff like that. But I definitely have a lot more firsthand experience. I do have some third person, I guess. Outside of myself.
Secondhand.
Third hand. I don't know what that is. But I do have some experience with people around me also suffering from depression, and me trying to help them through that, and also how that affected me as well. But yeah, you'll hear more about that as the weeks go on.
Yep. I've had first and secondhand. Now that I have the benefit of knowing secondhand instead of third hand or third party experiences. That's why I always let you talk first.
Let me make all the mistakes, and then you come in and know everything.
Yep. Suave. But anyway, yeah, I have a mix of both first and secondhand experience with depression, the topic itself. My family and my friends and myself, we all have had experiences with suicide, with death, and with depression. Many people in my family have been, diagnosed with depression. Family members very close to me have had suicidal thoughts, have attempted suicide. And last year, my cousin actually committed suicide. So I've been around depression all my life, implicitly or explicitly. Even if I didn't know it, depression was affecting me through somebody else, or something else. If you go theologically with me for a second, but yeah, I've had a history of depression myself. After seeing it, I kind of adopted it. And that's something that I think that is generational. If there's a problem that's going on with your family, more than likely you will experience it yourself or have problems with it yourself. And for me, that has been depression. Depression is something that I've gone to counseling for, and I recommend it to anybody who's even feeling an ounce of depression, because it does help. Depression hurts. It's ugly. Don't glorify it or glamorize it.
Yeah, great point.
Yeah, it's real, and you need real help with it. But yeah, in my life, I've tried to be the optimist about it. And throughout my life, from a firsthand experience, I'll just give a short story. Well, I mean, my father, I love my father very much. He's a great and godly man, but when I was younger, he was in and out of the home. And that's not necessarily all his fault. I don't put it on him, but there was kind of a power vacuum for a father figure in my life. And I was always trying to latch on to somebody who would give me instruction, as kind of a father figure whenever my dad was away. And I've had a history of, people leaving. I've been addicted to relationships in the past. I've always had to have a girlfriend. And they ended up leaving. And sometimes, God called me to leave them. But in my early life, they had to leave me. And so did the father figures. They ended up moving or something, out of my life. And I had to deal with that. But I became more prone to thinking that I'm the problem. I'm the one who's not worth it. Because if I was worth it, if I was worth the time, then these people would stay in my life. So I really started having doubts of my self-worth. But I realized after I became a Christian and after I found out that I do have a father who will always be there for me, I had to take into account the Bible verse John 16:33, where Jesus talks to his disciples, "I have said these things to you, that in me you may have peace, but in the world you will have tribulation, but take heart, I have overcome the world." So even though I am a Christian, I am a fervent follower of Jesus Christ, I know that I have peace, but troubles, trials, tribulations, whatever you want to call it, for me, that's depression. And that's always going to come back to haunt me unless, Jesus chooses to get rid of that. But I'm perfectly fine with living with depression, because that makes God's grace all the more available to me. But just know, even though you are in Christ, that there will still be troubles. But if we remember that Jesus says, "I've overcome the world," that's past tense. He's done it before. Before I've had any troubles, before I've had any thoughts, any suicidal thoughts, any suicidal actions, which is another story that I probably won't get into tonight. But that's my hope and that's my peace. But depression comes in different shapes, different sizes, and it hurts. So take it seriously.
I like that you used the verse and kind of directed that, you will have these things just because we are a Christian. And like Justin said, I'm a Christian and it's all better now. But I feel like there are Christians who try to take these Bible verses and try to make you better by saying them, like, Jesus says, don't worry, so don't have an anxiety and these things like that. I can see myself telling my wife, don't have any anxiety, honey, you'll be okay. Jesus says, if you're a Christian, don't worry, you can just trust all in him, you'll be fine. But yet, she suffers with anxiety, and,
right.
And those things that lead to depression. And it's like, I can just throw out a Bible verse and make everything better, but I don't know if they get the point that that's not how it works.
Right. And I think a lot of it, because I think there can be good intentions behind that, by throwing out, the verse and being like, focus on the bigger picture. But I think oftentimes too, are you doing it out of love for the other person, or are you trying to alleviate your own tension and your own,
I think that's what it is,
sort of anxiety in that situation where you're like, okay, this person, needs something. I need to fix their problem. So I'm going to throw this at them and tell them not to worry. And in a way, it almost belittles what they're going through, when you do that. But, you're doing love.
What do you think about that, Keith?
Which part?
I mean, we've been in, very traditional conservative style churches, and we see a lot of that. We see a lot of, Bible verses being thrown out there to people who are suffering with certain things. Do you see it more of just, let me throw this out there so I don't personally have to deal with it? Or do you think there's something, like Justin says, it's out of a motive of love, trying to show them, because I feel like more often than not, I just feel like I get the Bible verse just so they can say, well, I helped you in some way or another.
I think there's definitely a little bit of both. And it could be a little bit of both in an individual situation.
Okay.
Where maybe someone has opened up to you and about something that they're going through, and you probably feel two different things, maybe even more than that. But part of you probably like, wow, I really do want to help them because I love them, I care about them, and at the same time you're like, but what do I do here? So you do start to get anxious, and sometimes that's kind of the default thing that happens is, well, this is a way to address that, so let me address that in this way. I don't think there's probably some people that definitely just want to say, oh, I did something, so they'll just pass it off like that. But I think more often than not, probably it's just people don't know what to do in that situation, so they just find a way that they feel like they can resolve it.
Good. I'm glad you went to that. I was going to say, is it just because it's just, improperly trained people who don't know how to deal with these issues? And it's like, when something bad happens, oh, I'm praying for you, or my thoughts are with you, or how are you doing? The cliche question, how are you doing? Are you okay? We know you're not okay, but it's the only thing you can come up with because you don't know how to deal with the situation.
Right.
Or the situation is very scary and it freaks you out and it's causing you anxiety, like you said.
How did I know you were going to look at me?
Well, what I was going to say is that, do you feel that when Christians speak to you, Chris, when you're dealing with things, do you think, and I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus or just make it seem bad, but when they give you Bible verses or they talk very Christianese to you about things, how often do you feel that's genuine, or how often do you feel that's just what basically they have to do because they're Christian?
That's entirely situational. It really depends on the person for me.
Okay.
Like when you and Kim do it, you normally just don't throw out the verse and leave it at that. You'll follow up with, practical, real world things that I can apply for myself to help me try and cope with it in the moment. Other people that don't know me, they'll just throw it out there and be like, all right, well, I'll pray for you, and walk away. But, that doesn't do me any good, because if I don't believe the same way as you, how is your faith and your beliefs going to help me in any way? What I need is ways to cope with what I'm going through and try and figure out ways to defeat it. Not have you say you're going to do something for me that's not tangible for me in any way. The best thing people can do is just love on you and try and show you that whatever you're thinking isn't necessarily true. Your brain's just trying to trick you.
Like I said, we try to not paint with broad brushstrokes, because we can group all Christians in the same category, just like we was talking about earlier in the first segment. You can kind of say, well, all Christians do this, but not all Christians. All Christians do it, but they all do it with different, motivations and reasonings behind it. If I use a Bible verse now, it's serious. But
Same here.
yeah,
I feel like in situations like that, like if someone were to go before the church and give their testimony, it would be the better idea to develop a relationship with that person before you start trying to help them with their problems. Because just having heard their testimony and then feeling obligated to try and fix them is just going to do something but push them away. Now, your friends and your family, those will be the best people you can reach out to, and that should reach out to you and help you out.
Right.
do you think just because we're human beings and we're I guess fixers by nature, it seems like that we always have this idea that we've got to fix that person, and Christians, well, I mean, I'm not saying that the Bible's a bad place to go, but but that's our duct tape to things. I can fix you with this. Just give me a little duct tape and this. But Christians are, I got a little Bible verse and some prayer, and I can fix you. And that's where it kind of stops.
Right. And I'm totally guilty of that because just by nature, I'm definitely the kind of person that whenever somebody's going through anything rough or anything serious, I'm always the kind of person who wants to help them in any way I can and wants to almost solve their problem. And I came to realize that I'm a terrible savior. I'm really, really bad at it, no matter how much I want to help. But yeah, and throwing out Bible verses and saying, oh, well, okay, I'll, after all this, I'll pray for you and all that stuff, even though I usually don't, if I'm honest with myself. I usually forget about it. And it's almost a way to make me feel better, and also at the same time try to give them comfort, like, oh, I'll be thinking about you. Oh, you're struggling and is not in vain, and that I see you and that I remember you. Whether or not I do that or not, that probably makes me a terrible person, but we kind of all are. But
you're not a terrible person, Justin.
Oh, thanks, but whatever. No, and so I think there's mixed motivations there, definitely. And I think definitely throwing out Bible verses is, like you said, almost putting a Band-Aid on it and almost, in a way, trying to make us feel better. But if that person is a believer, then I do see the motivation of trying to have them see the bigger picture and give them comfort in that way. Whether or not that always works or whether or not that's always beneficial, that's a whole other question.
I'll say too that I've had. Well, I mean, when you spend years in the ministry, and you spend years, dealing with people at that level, you deal with people who are, depressed and suicidal and going through those things. And I'll say this: I think most people. I'm going to just kind of, I guess, go against the mainstream or go against the kind of thought I was formulating at first to kind of get a conversation, but I think most people in the church are genuinely concerned and want to see that person do better and get away from, maybe those thoughts of suicide or those thoughts of depression. And right, they may only use Bible verses because that's the only place they can really go. They're not clinically trained on how to deal with it. They're not, emotionally trained on how to deal with it. So the Bible's the only place they can go. And they feel because of their faith, that's the only place they can go. So they're genuinely trying to help.
Right. What
I want to tell Christians who may be listening, they're going through something, they may be dealing with somebody, know that it's not up to you. You have the ability to help, and you can try and you can do whatever you think is in the ability that God's given you, or whatever faith you are, whatever your faith gives you to help. But just know that it may not work.
Right.
You may. I mean, in dealing with depression, I think there is an onset of depression for a lot of people who have tried to help and it didn't work. I mean, we not too long ago lost someone who was close to us here to suicide, and a lot of us are reeling. I've posted a few things over the past few months, or a couple of things that were directly related to this person, and I think all the time that I spent and the conversations and talking to her about what I believe in my faith and seeing her come to accept that faith and and just going through this and thinking, okay, she's getting there, she's good, she's getting away from it, and then all of a sudden, where did this come from?
Right.
And that that can bring on depression to those people. Mm-hmm. And go ahead, Justin.
No, I was just going to say that I definitely identify with that, because you have the thought, like, what could I have done differently? What, could I have said something differently? Could I have, reached out? Was there something that I missed in something they said or something they did? And you beat yourself up about it.
Yeah.
And even if, I have experience with that, and even if they don't carry it out and commit suicide, if it's someone still going through a very, very rough time and you see them hurting like that and things don't seem like they're getting better, to me, where that led me was like, well, what I'm doing is not making a difference. I'm failing. I'm not helping this other person. In fact, as much as I try, it seems like they're getting worse. So, should I even do anything? And so I definitely identify with that, and that's something I've been through myself.
Yeah, it's hard because I think most people want to help in dealing with depression, but I think that's the other kicker to it too, is that sometimes we don't understand what that depression is, or what depression really is in a person's life.
Right.
Most people think depression is just a sadness. Oh, they're sad. They're upset about something and they're sad, but they don't realize how much more goes into that. Okay. I know somebody who has a really bad problem with anxiety. You get very anxious about, and let's say to them it's not something little, but to somebody else it may be little, and they go, well, why can't what's wrong with you? Why are you acting like that? And then, because of the way people treat that anxiety, it causes this depression, because now they start thinking, well, what's wrong with me? Why can't I handle this? Why can everybody else do this, but I can't do this? But I have this severe problem of not being able to do this because I'm so anxious. I have this anxiety that's causing me not to be able to do this in my life.
Right.
Which, that's not sadness. That's something going on in your brain that is causing you to I don't want to say lose it, but not to be able to function normally. Is normally a good word to use? Normally, like other people would function in that situation.
Right.
We've come a long way in this subject, though, because melancholy used to be a sin. Being depressed was sinful.
Yeah. Kind of like what I was talking about earlier. Jesus says, don't worry. And if you're worried and you're anxious and you're sad about things, oh, you're not following God, and that's a sin. Oh, you're not trusting in God, and you're sin.
That's probably the most unhelpful thing ever.
I was just watching the History Channel special on the 7 deadly sins, and they tied depression in with sloth.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
Wow. Well, that's very interesting.
So I'm going to hell.
Well, let's just put it like this. If we're going to hell for being lazy, we're all headed there.
America.
No, but you're right. There was for a period there that, I guess there was a period there for everything in the church that everything was sinful at some point. Mm-hmm. Good old apple pie was sinful at some point, I'm sure. And if that's sinful, I am going to hell.
That's with unleavened bread.
But, I guess because it hits so close to home for all of us, whether it's depression and suicide, like we'll probably talk about self-harm, it's hard to, I guess, kind of stay in this focused area when we're speaking generally. But let me ask you this question, okay? I was looking at some other stats too. Like, women are twice as likely to be depressed, but men, and to attempt suicide more than men, but men are 5 times more likely actually to carry out suicide and to, I guess, be successful at it. Mm-hmm. With some of the stats I was reading. And quite honestly, in the past few years, that ratio has been, accurate to funerals that I've had to do. You know, that is an accurate statistic. Why do you think that, you know, even though women deal with depression more, they may attempt suicides more? Why do you think it is the stats are higher for guys to go through with it?
I have a theory on that. The attempts that the guys make are typically more harsh than the ones women would take.
More grandiose.
Yeah, like
Okay.
If they're gonna do
they're more
it.
likely to succeed,
Okay.
or there's less of a comeback from it.
Right.
I think potentially also, and I mean this is just speculation because
Yeah.
I
That's fine.
don't know if we can know in every case, but I can see definitely how, at least with men, it's something that if you feel sad or if you feel depressed or the sort of more emotional side, it's seen as more negative coming from a male. That you're expressing genuine emotion that way and not, just suck it up and be a man about it. And so those things get repressed so deeply in you, and it just festers inside. And so when it actually comes to that and you reach that point, all that repressed sadness and depression and that energy comes out in a very violent way, whether that's violence to oneself or violence to others. And not having sort of a safety valve to release that energy through emotion and through, crying or speaking with it to a friend or a family member, something like that, without thinking that you'll be perceived as less manly or less, of a person because of it. Whereas potentially, and this is just, again, conjecture, that, women are much more comfortable with showing emotion and having sort of that safety valve and reporting, like telling other people, yeah, I'm depressed and yeah, I've tried to commit suicide. But with that safety valve, it doesn't fester up into that violent act.
It's very
Nearly as
philosophical
much as
of
men.
you. It's very,
what?
That's very philosophical of you.
Oh, well, thanks. I guess.
Well, because I was going to go the other route, that just because more suicides that are successful, I don't want to say successful, but the more suicides that are actually followed through and end in death are used with a gun, and guys have more guns than girls.
There's probably some truth to that.
That's just how I was thinking about that. I'm like, and I like Graham was saying, when guys do something, we do this like, all right, we're going to do this we're going to do this for real. Where I think, not that girls are not trying to do it for real. It's just that I feel more of them are going with the overdosing on pills, and because I think that's more the suicide attempts that I've dealt with in my life. Most of them have been by trying to overdose on pills or razor blade to the wrist.
Yeah, that was mine. Yeah. I never had an access to a gun, which thank God during that time in my life that I didn't. And that's also one reason why I don't want to own a gun myself. It's because I don't want to get back in that place and
makes sense
and have such easy access to what I perceive as a way out.
Right. All right. I can see that. I thought about it. I took a lot of pills one time thinking I was going to do it, and I was like, just got really high.
Yeah.
Didn't kill myself.
Same.
I tried hanging myself. Didn't work either.
Branch break?
Right to the ground.
Same.
I don't know why. Some people tell me it was God. God was protecting me. He's watching me when I wasn't a Christian. I don't know if I'd believe that at the time, but...
My dad says it's because I'm stupid and picked a really thin branch. Which I know he said stupid with love because he's glad I didn't work, but, it was 10 years later, so he made jokes about it.
Yeah. But, I mean, I've had people who are very close, very, very close to me attempt suicide, and it's not it's not a cool thing. Like I said, we're going to deal with this again later, but... as we're talking tonight, the main message tonight for us is, look, you're not alone. Right. Everybody deals with this,
Everybody goes through something.
Whether it's like we said, whether it's personally in yourself or you deal with it with a loved one. Everybody's going through these things, and we're in a day and age now where there's help everywhere. And hopefully through these shows that we do, especially the next two, we'll be able to give you, places and numbers and things and websites that can help you, find treatment for your depression, help in case you have these thoughts of suicide, and, deal with what's going on in your life. And I think that's the main thing. I think from when you read David's blog, you're going to see it. When you hear Justin talk about it, maybe when you hear any of us talk about it, in order to overcome it, it's not a get over it mentality. You just got to get over it. That's not. You have to find help. You have to have people to talk to. You have to. You have to get counseling. You have to have someone you can talk to. And we talk to each other on the show. Hopefully none of us are depressed right now. Well, I may be at the end of the night when the game is over. If my defense don't hold up. But that's silly. I know. That's silly. I understand. But you know what? There are people in the world today who, are so attached to sports and fantasy football and things like that become very depressed through that.
I was about to say, luckily for me, whether a sports team wins or loses, that is not at all a catalyst for my depression.
But there are people who get very, very depressed when a sports team loses. I mean, in the rivalry that me and Keith have, as far as college basketball is concerned, there are a lot of people who become very, very, very depressed and angry, and a lot of mental emotions or mental things happen. Mental emotions. A lot of things happen mentally in a person that I've seen, and I'm like, I don't understand. For me, I love sports. I love it. But I'm not attached emotionally to it to that level.
I get pretty attached emotionally to certain situations.
Do you throw things?
I don't throw things. I'll hit stuff, not like hard stuff, but like I will pound the crap out of my bed. Like I will and I'll yell a lot if no one's home. I try not to do it when people are there, but I will occasionally some profanity.
Yeah.
Which doesn't happen very often for me, but
no, it doesn't.
Is that really an emotional response? Because I curse all the time about things.
No,
for me it is.
But for Keith, that is an emotional response.
Oh.
But I was just thinking, like, I remember when I was much, much younger, that, like, watching the Bulls play, I could get a little upset and angry when they lost or something happened. I'd throw something at I used to have a foam Nerf ball I'd throw at the TV because I didn't like a call from the ref.
That's some friends' parents. They had bad call bricks. Huge UNC fans. They didn't even like the announcer. I think it's Vitale. They hated him.
Yeah.
So they would mute
Dookie
the TV
man.
and they would listen to it on the radio.
Dookie
Even with the delay and everything, they were that hardcore about it.
Wow.
That's because the announcers usually suck.
But it causes
Woody
depression.
Durham was so much better.
But depression can set in from all sorts of things.
Absolutely.
And
that's something. Okay, I'll address this because I think that's something that a lot of people don't understand pertaining to depression. Is I would say in most cases, I don't have any statistics to back this up. In most cases, it's not one big thing that causes someone to get depressed. It's a bunch of little things that build up over time, and they continually drive down someone's emotional state, and they get themselves into a rut that they cannot dig themselves out of. And it keeps going until you find some release or some way to help yourself.
That's interesting. I mean, not that I disagree with it. I just think for most cases you might be right. There's a trickle effect to what's going on in your life. Where I do know that there are some instances of like suicide and depression that are one big
major
thing.
Yeah, one major thing. A breakup or a death or something.
Yeah.
Some big catalyst that like sends
Some
you
sort
way
of traumatic
down.
event.
Yeah. But I would think that in most cases, at least in my experience, it's something bad happens, and then another thing bad happens, and then another thing bad happens, and it builds and builds.
A lot of bad things. Yeah. A lot, and let me say this: I won't call them little things. I would say sometimes for that person, there are a lot of big things that have just piled up over an amount of time. I mean, my wife will tell you, she went into a crazy bout of depression, but it was one death in the family after another, after another, after another. I mean, she lost so many people within a year, to deal with that. And then she was kind of dealing with it. And then there was that one major thing that happened later that really just kind of took everything into perspective, and caused, a serious bout of depression and anxiety and things like that. And I'll say this too. I think I've seen this in a lot of people, and y'all can say if I'm wrong, or I don't know, maybe help me out here, but I have seen that when people go into depression, they form these anxieties that affect their lives physically. Like their depression puts them into places where they don't want to do certain things that give them this anxiety that just like, let's just, I'm going to make up something silly, but just kind of show you that like they went through they had all these bad things happen, and it caused them to go into this fit of depression. And to deal with the depression, they stopped walking on red blocks because somehow that freaked them out so much that kind of puts them back into that place. It puts them back in that place. Now they have an anxiety every time they see a red block. I can't step on it. But it causes anxiety. It causes them to have this anxiety about something that particularly doesn't have anything to do with it, but they associate it through their depression. I know it sounds really silly, but
I totally get that. So for me, physical space and where I am when something happens is important to me. That's one way how I like keep memory of specific things is like where I was, like, for example, like, where were you when you heard this song or that song or whatever.
Right.
And there are certain things and events that have happened in my life where I was in a specific place, whether a dorm room or somewhere on campus or something like that. And every time I walk by that place on campus, it brings me so much dread and anxiety. I was telling David this actually on the way here, and because we passed by one of the buildings, and every time I walk by it, it just gives me so much dread and so much anxiety that I hate walking by it. So I guess that fits exactly to what you were saying.
Yeah, it's crazy that how all these things trigger into one another.
Right.
It's, I mean, whether it's, okay, and again, this is silly, but, when somebody eats a food and they throw up afterwards. They never go back to eat that food, even though it wasn't the food that made them throw up. It was just something that was attached to that incident that causes them to have that triggers that memory.
Yep.
For me, I was in the 6th grade, and I was eating the cherry pie at the school, and I was sick that day. I didn't know I was coming down with something, and I went to the bathroom and threw up after I ate the cherry pie. And for almost 30 years, I did not eat cherry pie, but now I do, because I realized that was just something that was mentally triggered there, and it has no effect on my actual life. I won't throw up if I eat that cherry pie now. I mean,
very good.
I'm proud of you.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm glad I was able to overcome something so small in my life. But honestly, it was really big because I love cherry pie.
It's the little battles that count. Bunch of little victories is one big victory.
Yeah, but it does help. Like if you can overcome little things, which again, I'm not calling them little just to be, making them insignificant.
Trivializing them.
Exactly. But if you can overcome a small step at a time, I think it helps to your overall goal of being able to overcome not fully overcoming depression in your life, but being able to battle it and cope with it every day.
I remember those cherry pies from school, and they were kind of nasty.
I don't know, man. I'm sorry. I come from a different era of school food, so school food wasn't depressing for me.
He's got like 20 years on you, Graham.
Actually,
No, I don't.
Son of a biscuit eater.
I'm not that far behind.
Yeah, I was the same way with quiche. I couldn't eat quiche for a really long time because my grandma made some really bomb quiche when I was younger. And I was like, you know what? I've never had it before, so I'll eat it. And as soon as I ate it, like a couple minutes later, I was running to the bathroom and I was throwing up for like 24 hours straight.
Oh, that's lovely.
Got a
Yeah,
similar
and I did
story
not-
involving
I didn't-
coconut rum.
So I did not. That was my first experience with quiche.
Oh yeah, that's gotta suck.
Yeah, so I didn't touch the stuff. I don't think I've eaten quiche since.
Why did you poison me, Grandma?
Yeah, I know. Grandma, you make such good food. Was this a punishment for something?
You betrayed me.
That's the sad thing, Keith, that he doesn't eat quiche.
I like quiche.
I like quiche a lot.
Yeah, the Army kind of ruined quiche for me.
That wasn't quiche. That was just omelets and ham MREs.
There was broccoli quiche. It was gross.
But with depression and suicide and self-harms and just not those, I mean, you got mental illnesses. You have people who are bipolar, manic depressive. I mean, there's a wide spectrum of when it comes to mental illnesses. And even though we're dealing with depression and we're not really getting into the whole mental illness genre of things, it's because there's no way we could talk about them all. I mean,
Right.
and no way we are trained to talk about them all.
Nope.
But what also for people who are on the outside looking in at those people who are dealing with these things, you got to have a strong sense of compassion and understand that even though you don't understand why they're going through it, and you may not understand how to deal with it, or you may even think that it's silly what they're going through. It's not. It's a real thing, and you need to have a compassionate heart for those people. And I'm going to tell you this. Go read up on it. I mean, if you have somebody in your life, family, loved one, friend, spend a little time reading up on depression and maybe what they're dealing with so you can be more prepared when you're talking with them. Have y'all ever had somebody that you knew that may have been dealing with something, but you weren't really being smart and you just say flippant things that,
absolutely.
that like trigger stuff? Like I do it all the time with Justin. I don't
example.
Yeah, I just you don't think about those things though. You just, because you are who you are and they are who they are, and when you're in conversation or you're just talking, just out of the blue, you don't tend to really put focus on what they've been through in their lives, and you say things that are like silly to you but are not silly to them.
Right.
And you may hurt their feelings, or hurt their feelings seems so childish to say, but I mean, it cause them emotional instability. but
Emotional distress.
Instability.
It's something of that nature. I don't know. I'm not the smart one here. I just talk a lot. But you make that mistake. You don't know you made that mistake sometimes until much, much later.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I want to say on the other side of things, though, for those people who are going through it, be open and honest about your feelings if you can, and let somebody know that, hey, that like cut deeply, or that is something that triggers these things for me. Hopefully there's a love that goes back and forth, because how could I ever help Justin or know what Justin's going through unless Justin goes, you know what? That sucked. You
Right.
suck.
And I mean, and that requires honesty, but that also requires vulnerability on both sides.
Exactly.
And if we can learn to be more comfortable with being vulnerable and not as afraid of, showing who we really are, how we really feel, and doing that in love and, just being open with one another, I think that can contribute a lot to progress. And I think even conversations like these, where we are honest and we are open and we are very vulnerable in these conversations, I think it does a lot, and it really helps sort of destigmatize a lot of things that have been built up about mental illness and about depression and things like that, because like we said at the beginning, there's always been these huge stigmas around these issues and these sort of conditions. And I think by having conversations like this, it really goes a long way to help people who may not identify maybe specifically with, say, depression or anxiety or something like that, but might be going through something else. But it helps them sort of gain that perspective and have empathy with others who may be going through those things.
Empathy is a gift.
Yeah.
Yeah. Empathy is a gift.
Yeah, there was, just for an example of that, I was talking to somebody in the workplace, and it was in front of people, and I haven't seen this person in a really long time, and this person walked out and said hello to me, and I noticed that this person had a higher pitched voice than I remembered, and I said, "Oh, hey, what's up, dude?" Because I knew this person for a long time, and then I looked and I found out that she was transitioning into a woman. And I said this very publicly. I just said, "Hey, what's up, dude? We've been friends for a while, or at least acquaintances." And then she very graciously said, I changed my name." And then I look and I see the name change, and I apologize. And then we just went about our business as like it never happened. And I know this is not an example necessarily of like depression or suicide or anything, but I'm grateful that she brought it up.
Yeah.
So yeah, because that was very civil. If that's how she chooses to define herself, then I'm going to respect that, because just saying, "No, you're a dude and you'll always be a man," that's not going to wake somebody up or say, "Oh wow,
I see the error of my ways."
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad you stumbled across my path so that you could tell me what I am.
Yeah, exactly.
Who I am.
But putting that in the realm of saying somebody who's depressed, if somebody's like, "Oh, kill yourself," you used a comma instead of a period in the sentence. "I'm a grammar Nazi. Go kill yourself." Really, if you've had issues with depression and suicide, or even if that just irks you to no end, like it does me, be open about it. Say, "Hey, that bothers me. I would appreciate it if you don't say that." And then 9 times out of 10, the person's going to say, "Okay, I'm sorry," and they're not going to say, "No, I'm going to keep saying what I'm saying. I don't care." Just blah blah blah, and go on a rant. But yeah, just don't be afraid to be vulnerable, because most times it'll pay off in the long run.
Well, point one, dude is for me gender neutral. I use dude to everybody.
Same. That's why
everybody's
difficult
dude. Yeah, everybody's dude. I'm like, "Dude, what's up?"
He even calls his wife dude sometimes.
I really do. I really do. But and maybe we'll kind of finish up tonight by saying, kind of just building off what you were talking about. It's a lot easier in life if everybody kind of opens up a little bit more. I know being vulnerable and open is scary, very scary for people, because they're afraid of the reaction they're going to get back. But
Right.
I do believe that if we were a little bit more open, a little bit more vulnerable about what's going on and how we feel about things, that we would see that it's not going to be that bad. Like you said, David, they're not going to jump out, but I don't care what you say. Go kill yourself anyways. You're not going to get that.
Yeah.
I think what you're going to get is somebody go, "Oh, I'm very sorry for that." But I also think that it's how we approach each one of those areas. Like, don't jump down their throat because they said it, because they didn't know. You're going to get a very equal reaction back to what just happened.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like, you got to be gracious on one side if you want somebody to be gracious back. That's how I feel about it.
Mm-hmm.
I guess in saying everything we said tonight, you're not alone. I mean, you're not alone. Everybody, I think every person is going to go through some form of depression, deal with suicide, deal with people or deal with self-harm. Maybe some form of mental illness. And as we talked about tonight, it's just kind of general back and forth. Some people talked, a little more personally about what's going on in their lives. It's tough to, I guess, be very, very open to a certain level and feel like nobody's judging you for it.
Right, exactly.
So I guess we'll anybody want to say any final thoughts before we move into, a popular segment?
Yeah, I mean, like we said, that this is the first week of a short series, and that tonight was more general. But yeah, like Keith was saying, you're not alone. You're never alone. If reach out, talk to someone. Even if that's us. If someone's going through something, we're here at least
that's
to
scary.
listen. To listen to you and to respond, and just to be someone who can empathize. And so if you are going through something, or if you have a story to tell us, share it with us. And we want to be there for you as much as we can, and also be there for each other, because I think that's a huge thing. And that's one of the reasons why we're all together here now, is because we've all been there for each other through the good times and the bad. And so I love you guys, but yes,
I love you guys, but
but
not really.
but yeah, that's. I know we're going to get into more detail in
Yes.
the next few ones, so we'll leave it at that.
Stay tuned to that
for now. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, if you're ever in a position, know somebody that's battling with depression, and you don't really know how to help them, you don't know what to say, don't pass off a Bible verse. I mean, sometimes the best thing you can do is just listen to them and be honest. I'm not sure where you're coming from, but I'll hold your hand and walk with you through it, and we'll figure this out together. Don't think you have to have an answer to help.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think I don't know is an acceptable answer sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just following what Graham said. Okay. Yeah. Just want to make sure. I didn't want to.
We didn't actually introduce Graham tonight. Yeah, that's Graham.
Have you guys ever been on the same podcast before?
No.
Okay.
Nice
well,
to meet you, Graham. I'm David.
Nice meeting you, Dave.
We are great hosts.
We suck.
But anyway, yeah. It just simply reciting a Bible verse. It's good that you know Christianity, but it's better if you show it.
Word.
Live that verse. If you're talking about somebody who's dealing with death, don't just say, "Oh, to be absent with the body is to be, to be present with Christ." Really live that verse out. Show somebody hope. Show hope to help. People really cope with what they're going through. So that's my advice for somebody who's a believer and who's trying to help somebody deal with something that they don't understand. But for somebody on the inside, really looking out, kind of like what Flannel Keith said.
That's me tonight.
Yeah, that's the other key.
Sometimes you burrow yourself in the ground and you can't dig your way out. I would say it's easier to talk to somebody if you're first dealing with it. If it just hits you, immediately seek help. Immediately reach out to somebody, because the more you let it fester, the harder it is to talk to somebody, because the darker you feel and the more you're afraid to actually let somebody in.
Word.
So, yeah. So really, as soon as you feel that hit you, just talk to somebody. Let somebody know how you're feeling before it gets to a point where you feel utterly hopeless.
Word. Hopefully, we're able to help with what we're saying, and stick with us for the next couple of weeks. I mean, like you always know, we really don't know what we're talking about. We just winging it. We're just winging it. We're just a bunch of guys that sit around and feel like we want to talk about something, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah, and we talk from our experiences, so
Yeah, we don't know much. But we'll be back in a minute with Fun Time. Wow. Sorry, guys. That's so bad.
music, save us.
My bags and say goodbye to my wife for what seems like the millionth time. They said it gets easier, but they lie. She looks at me and says, really, baby, I will be just fine. But then she looks away so I don't have to see her cry. And that is when I ask myself, how am I supposed to be everything they expect me to be when I feel so alone? 'Cause I left my heart at home, and she needs me, but I know they need me too. So God, give me the strength to do what you created me to do.
And we're back. That was Memphis Mayfire with Miles Away, the acoustic version.
All right, very nice.
That was actually really good.
Yeah.
It was. I heard it tonight earlier, and I was like, man, this is really good. But I like Matty Mullins, man. He just I don't know, just good. I mean, Justin, whenever I say something, Justin always laughs and looks back at David like, ha ha ha, he does know nothing.
This idiot.
Yeah, just inside jokes.
Matty Mullins.
Matty Mullins is a hard person. Inside jokes on Work on Podcast. All
They
right.
do not. I want to say this before we go. Before we look, all right. So when the SCOTUS ruling happened and everybody filtered their,
Okay.
they filtered their. I have hard times with these filters that Facebook throws out there.
Okay.
That's just all. It's like everybody jump on the. I understand. I feel bad. You know, the France thing is terrible.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
do I need to put the France flag up? That's what I was wondering.
I feel the same.
Do it- I
Because
mean-
it's like,
Do I need to do it?
why exactly am I doing this? Am I doing this because everyone else is doing it and I don't want to seem like I'm...
You don't want to seem like a jerk
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
by not putting it up.
I like that Homer Simpson meme where he's in the bar just like he's staring
Right.
off into nothing, and everybody else around him is like got a flag on him.
Yeah. I mean, I don't care that people are doing it. It's great that you feel like you're doing that, but do I need to do it to show that I feel that I have sympathy for what's going on?
yeah. And it's and at the same time, it's kind of like, why you got to make a filter for this? Like,
Does it help out in
Is
any
it-
way?
is it-
Is it doing something?
is
I don't know.
is it necessary?
Yeah, that's actually something I'm not sure of. For a little bit, I didn't even do any research. I've just figured, maybe depending on how many downloads this thing gets, maybe it proceeds from what is made from the downloads gets put into charity, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I was just wondering
Really?
about that. Like, if there was a more of a reason behind it than just saying, "Hey, we're thinking about France."
Right. Well, I mean, it's just to show solidarity with the movement, whether it's the rainbow filter or the France flag filter and stuff like that. However, it can very easily turn into a sort of bandwagoning sort of deal there, where you're just doing it because one, everyone else is doing it, and two, you don't want to, like I said, you don't want to seem like a jerk who doesn't
Yeah.
show support because obviously if you don't change your profile picture, then you don't care.
Oh, I guess I don't care.
Yeah.
I say
I just-
facetiously,
I've never
for the record.
I just never changed my profile. I actually just did last week for the first time in months. Well, except for that one thing.
Yeah, that was.
But
We were never supposed to speak of that again.
I don't really feel compelled to put a filter on my Facebook. Am I a jerk for that?
No,
I love France. I think it's a great nation, but
you're not a jerk for that. And even if you were considered a jerk, you make up for it with this. I'm sorry, but every time I do it, I'm trying not to laugh out loud.
I don't know whether I find it funny or creepy every time.
It's very disturbing.
Creepy.
Graham, what do you think?
It's pretty creepy.
Was that the first time you've heard that?
Oh no, I listen to the podcast religiously.
Oh, thank you.
Punny.
Speaking of punny,
Okay, so tonight we have a story that was actually brought to us by Justin.
Thank you.
It's an interesting one.
I'm a terrible person.
Yeah, Justin's pretty horrible.
yeah, he doesn't have the friends thing either.
Yeah.
Oh.
And I said to Justin, I said, I can't read this. This is horrible. And Justin was like, no, you have to. So, tonight our story comes to us from Gawker. Headline is, Police say man with no hands and no legs is armed and on the run. Authorities in Florida are searching for an armed quadruple amputee who's reportedly been on the run since Tuesday, hoping to question him about his involvement in a double murder. Sean Petrosino, 30, reportedly lost his legs and part of his arms to bacterial meningitis years ago. Police say he moved in with his parents last week after separating from his wife amid some serious financial issues. Both of his parents were found dead Tuesday morning after Sean's mother, Nancy Petrosino, failed to show up for her job as a school teacher. Sean Petrosino was last seen on an ATM surveillance camera Tuesday morning. Although police say he's currently a person of interest and not an official suspect in the double murder, a spokesperson did caution that he's armed with a gun. A prosthetics expert told the Orlando Sentinel, you just don't need a hand to shoot both your parents, just the will, as most guns can be apparently fired by handless without special devices. So, armed and on the run. No hands, no legs.
All right. Well, my first takeaway, he moved in with his parents last week, and then by Tuesday, he supposedly murdered them. How bad is it to live with your parents? It wasn't even a full week.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
I lived with my dad for about 3 months, and he's still alive.
But I think your dad would kill you first.
Oh, yeah, that's not even a question. I'm living large.
Oh my gosh. It's just too much, man. It's like, do you take this to be serious? Like, oh my gosh.
I mean, come on. The headline, though.
Well, just from a journalistic perspective, I mean, I used to be on like the school paper, the editor for the school paper, and had to come up with headlines for all the articles. This headline is genius. Just in terms of
Pretty awesome.
I have a question.
If I was the cop putting out the APB on this guy, I would be like, suspect is to be considered unarmed and dangerous.
And that's the thing. He's like, he is armed.
Well, like, the headline is the story.
Yeah, it
if
is.
not for the headline, there's no story here. People kill people and are fugitives all the time.
Yeah.
No,
The fact that he is a quadruple amputee makes the story.
we're missing something very important here. How does he move?
That's an interesting point.
Wheelchair?
Does he roll out of town?
But no, that's a good point though, because most people in wheelchairs, either if it's a manual wheelchair where you have to move the wheels, I mean you have to have arms for that. Even like the powered wheelchairs, you have to have an arm to operate.
No, I know
He's
what it
rolling
is.
and
I've
hating.
seen it. They have the ones for the quadriplegics that have like the little blow tube, and however like if you suck in, you go reverse. If you blow in it, you go forward. I'm not kidding. It's a wheelchair that's powered by air pressure, and depending on what kind of pressure you blow into the tube is the direction the chair goes.
And if you flick the tube with your tongue, apparently you fire a gun.
But then the question still raises, how is he getting away so fast in a wheelchair powered by air pressure?
Justin, you are a horrible person.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. I think me and Graham made it worse.
I was sitting there thinking the whole time, how's a guy with no arms gonna fire a gun? And what mechanism does he have to allow him to shoot 2 people consecutively? Successfully.
If it's a hair trigger, you can do it with your tongue.
How do you aim?
Hold on, Mom. Stand right there. Stand right there.
Okay, I'm going to hell.
I think we all are after
God,
this segment.
that's terrible.
Oh my gosh. Well,
I have more questions than answers.
All I imagine.
I have a bunch of questions. I mean, they got him on the ATM surveillance camera.
And those things are at eye level, so how are they getting someone that might be in a wheelchair?
Maybe he's strapped to a Segway.
Did he go to the ATM? How did he get his money?
They don't have blow tubes, so that one's a mystery to me.
Pencil in the mouth, touchscreen.
Oh my gosh.
Oh. How do you get the card in the
Are
slot?
those heat activated? He probably had to use his nose. That's serious. His nose and his mouth to get the money out.
I would say pencil.
But no, because those things are heat activated. If they're
you
anything
get my
like
message,
phones,
Keith?
it's the body heat that's what triggers us. Yeah,
All
but
right.
those are specially designed.
For a Weeble, this guy's got like a multitasking level over 9,000.
You did not just say Weeble.
Oh, if we don't end this, somebody's going to end
It's
it
over
for us.
9,000.
Well, guys and girls, contrary to what we've been doing for the past 5 minutes, we just want to remind you that people are not projects. They're people just like you and me. So love them like you love yourself. And we'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Forgetting Walls podcast. If you're subscribing to us on iTunes, leave us a rating to help us spread the word about this podcast. Remember, the only way this works is if you share your story. So be sure to visit the website and leave us a comment at forgettingwalls.com or find us on Twitter at forgettingwalls and facebook.com/forgettingwalls.
Peace!
Thank you! Thank you, I'll be here all week!
I find your lack of faith disturbing.